Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. The period of perceived inactivity is now completely over, and we see things are happening fast and they're escalating quickly. So, we're going to have a lot of things to talk about today, and we're going to start with the things that are happening in Belgorod region. So, if you are not sure what was happening, within the Ukrainian military, there are certain groups, let's put it this way, not within Ukrainian military, but as an associated groups with Ukrainian military, there are Russian volunteers, people that have citizenship of Russia, and people that are fighting against Putin's regime. So the actual opposition of Russia, and not the blah blah liberal opposition that are just sitting in their cozy studios and thinking that Putin's regime is going to collapse on their own and they're going to get all the power in a country by doing nothing. No, it's the actual Russians that are helping Ukraine with weapons in hands to fight it. And so these Russian groups, they have been doing those tryout breakthroughs through the border of Russia and Ukraine. And for that, I probably should zoom out, because Russia, the situation that allowed this is that Russia is very, very greedy, right? Because for their operations and what they need to do, they need to have a lot of men. So Putin, essentially knowing that Ukraine is somewhat bound by the allies on not acting on the territory of Russia, not invading territory of Russia, which is, must be said, is completely nonsense statement, because wars don't work like that. If another country invades your country, then the country that has been invaded has full right to operate on the territory of the country that it invaded, and has the full right to strike that territory of that country. Because otherwise, I'm sorry, but like what the Western allies are restricting Ukraine by using the weapons on the territory of Russia is just pissing me off. But besides that, the point is that Russia kind of knew that overall these regions over here, they are kind of safe because Ukraine is not going to invade. So they were able to disproportionately increase the presence of their forces along these areas here. So that was problematic, because for Ukraine, that meant that they did need to have significant forces, not just here north along the Russian border, but also somewhat here north along the Belarusian border. This created a little bit of a problem for Ukraine, that Russia has the ability to focus only on the relatively narrow area of the front line, whereas Ukrainian forces are significantly stretched over this whole territory of border regions with Russia. This obviously creates an openings. And to be honest, I was expecting an opening. What I was not expecting is that it will be happening on the territory of Russia. Because if you remember the Kharkiv offensive and Kherson offensive, then it was always some kind of maneuver that was done by Ukrainians to distract Russians, to make sure that they are not focused where Ukraine will actually do the action. I was expecting something like this. But I was not expecting the attack inside of the Russian territory because, well, as I said before, that's a little bit problematic. However, because it's being done only by the Russian forces that entered the territory of Russia, this changes things significantly. So what happened? Well, the Russian forces, and I'm going to be extremely immature here. So the Russian forces have entered this region right here, and they were able to establish themselves in these villages right here, and you can say somewhere right here. So excuse me for these kind of arts, but that's literally where any kind of activities were happening in this region. So why is this important? Well, this doesn't threaten anything. Let's be very clear. This doesn't threaten the effects on stability of the regions or any kind of strategic balance. However, what it does threaten is that this complicates situation in this whole region. So now, basically, by doing that, this whole front line that we were talking about, and it goes obviously up there as well for the Russians, this whole front line now becomes problematic. That basically will force Russian hand to try to relocate some of the troops from the south side, or else then these incursions will continue happening. I am completely certain that these incursions are not meant to be like a major pushes because, firstly, they're not that deep, right? They entered some villages, but there is nothing like of a great significance. It's a nice position they entered also. Like some people have noted that here they have a river here, they have a river here, and then there is a lake here. So that allows for great natural borders for the people that would be defending some place in this region. So it's a great opportunity to poke Russia. But right now, it's obviously not significant enough to threaten. However, if Russia will not pay attention, if they will deploy only police force, we've seen how when the war started, when police force was trying to fight Ukrainian military personnel, it did not go well. Police is not well equipped. And already right now, we are hearing that Russia is deploying aviation to help them fight off the situation that is happening in the area. So aviation that could have been used to support, for example, their troops on the Ukrainian front lines is already being pulled to support the defeating of this resistance from the Russian resistance fighters that are affiliated with the armed forces of Ukraine. It's important to say it very clearly who these people are, because otherwise there are confusion that, oh, I've heard Ukraine invaded Russia. We already discussed that this is not how wars work. But secondly, no, it's the Russian citizens that are fighting in Russia. So very, very different. Then we go to the other parts of the front line where there are also things to talk about. Most important one is Bakhmut, and I'm gonna talk about the elephant in the room, about the area first, which is that Bakhmut is taken. This is a proper propaganda narrative. There is an aspect to this that makes me happy, because I've been telling you for so long that taking Bakhmut doesn't really mean a lot, because strategically this place is not that significant. It doesn't allow for any kind of major breakthroughs, it doesn't allow for any kind of major advancements. It's a purely made up propaganda tool. And now that Bakhmut is captured, then it basically shows that nothing is happening after Bakhmut is captured. So they did a check mark on one of the cities in Ukraine, but the war is still going on. Like, it's like, because what they were trying to build a narrative that like, oh, if Bakhmut is captured, that's it. Like, Ukrainian troops are done, US is next, we're going to capture a Pentagon and a seat of power, yada, 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 stuff like that. So that is completely ludicrous, and I'm kind of happy in a sense, despite everything. Obviously, there's a lot of stupid trolls and that are now running around waving their Z flags, saying, oh, Bakhmut is ours. Though a little bit less now because of the incursion into the Belgorod. But still, the point is that they're going to be doing this for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks or so. But after that, it's going to start sinking in for them that like nothing happened, that they took Bakhmut, yes, that they had over 100,000 casualties just in the region itself. So it's incredible waste of life, and there's a lot of things to be said, but the point is, this doesn't change anything. Moreover, we hear that situation and the actions that Ukrainian troops are doing in a third separate assault brigade and other guys that are working in a Bakhmut area are doing really great job. I can tell you for a fact that the deep state map here does not represent the actual situation. Right now, there is a bit of a pause in sharing the news. But I can tell you for sure that the situation both in the south side and both in the north side here is better for Ukrainians than this map is showing. We don't know precise details, but we definitely hear that it's at least additional 6, 7, or 800 meters deeper. 6, 7, 800 meters deeper, for example, to the area of Klishivka would mean that that Ukrainian troops have beaten the Russian troops of major defensive position that will basically allow to start strengthening. There is also has been a comment from the General Syrskyi, the commander of the area, and he said very bizarre thing that Bakhmut is close to be tactically encircled. That is not true. I'm not sure what was meant, potentially he was meaning like separate positions of Russians, like some high grounds or something. But Bakhmut is not close to a circle, right? If I would be a commenter for the Russian side, I would say that Bakhmut is fine for now. So as weird as this, Russians really need to start worrying when we will hear that something like Krasna Hora is already under Ukrainian control, when Pithorodne is under Ukrainian control, when we hear that, for example, Opytne is already under Ukrainian control. Then it's like, okay, that's kind of like problematic, because those are important points of control. From these points, Ukrainians do have significant control of their positions, but we're not there yet. Even if I sum up all of the advances, and even if I because they sometimes say that it's like we advanced like 300 to 500 meters today, even if I add all of those up, we would not reach like full control of Opytne, and that would be all over the Russian news and Russian media, I'm pretty sure. Right now, even Russian media is a little bit silent about Bakhmut. So, all in all, city itself is taken by Russians. I have no problem saying that, because I don't actually know why people have problems with this, but that's just a fact. Taking city is not the same as holding city, but the situation for Russians on the flanks of Bakhmut is deteriorating and is continuing deteriorating. Importantly, both in the north side, where the Russian Volunteer Corps and region of Free Russia are operating, and in the Bakhmut area, there are still no confirmation that any of the newly formed assault brigades are involved. There was one news about the 47th Assault Brigade trying to participate because they're drones, but it was maybe because they were sharing some of the equipment, like control modules or something. The point is that the main force of Ukrainians is still not engaged, and Russians are not having a good day quite. And they're especially not having a good day around Avdiivka. Just today and a couple of days before, there was another attempt with a couple of armored columns to advance to Avdiivka. And don't ask me, please, why are they continuing doing that? Because from all intents and purposes, they were supposed to be in defense. But as far as we understood, because of their book, like How to Do Warfare, the Russian book, the doctrine, to prevent an offensive action towards you, you need to do an offensive action towards the enemy, which maybe is true in some sense, but the execution of this really makes me question, because Avdiivka is extremely heavily fortified defensive position. And there have been rumors that apparently Ukrainians are preparing to attack towards Donetsk, which is, if you notice, right here. But that's a little bit kind of silly, because it's also a fortified position towards Donetsk. And we've discussed that taking Donetsk is maybe a little bit problematic. But the point is, so the Russians send these couple of armored columns that are consisting of like a tank, then there is APC, and then there is a couple of armored vehicles that are carrying, not APC, but the BMP. And then there are a couple of armored vehicles like MRAPs and something like this, like Humvees and so on. Well, Russia doesn't have Humvees, but analog. And then another APC or a BMP. And like a couple of those columns were just going to Avdiivka, and then they just got blown up by artillery, destroyed, and then drove over mines. The stupidity of that, like a year into war, we have seen everything. We have seen Solidar, we have seen anything, and it still keeps happening. It still is going on. And if there would not be video, and maybe I'm going to link a video into my Discord, you should join that, like to check this out. But if there would not be video, I would literally tell you it's impossible. It's too stupid. Like, no one would do this. Yet this is exactly what we see happening. And we see also with that, like some parts of those gets blown up. Then the troops, they start hiding inside of the trenches. Then some like 4 or 5 Ukrainian troopers come and they take 22 prisoners capture. And they just then extract them, 22 prisoners in one attack, and like some 50 additionally killed, as far as I understood. Like that was an attack of like 100 people for no reason at all. So basically, Russians are continuing taking losses because they can. I guess, despite the can part is a little bit questioned. But that's what's happening, as stupid as it sounds. And we know that they're continuing doing this. Like just recently, I've heard the situation that around Nevelske, again, Russians are trying to attack and they're getting their face caved in. And then on the southern side, we have a big and important shaping operation ongoing. We hear that there are strikes around the Melitopol area, Berdyansk area, Mariupol area, for the like especially Mariupol, because that's when the storm shadows are going. So there are strikes that are happening on the key logistics points. Right now, the movements of Ukrainians, I hear some, but if there would be something that I can report, I would report it to you instantly at that same moment. I want to wrap it up by saying hi to Tim Fletcher. Tim is traveling to Ukraine. Please know that we care about you, and thank you so much for keeping me informed. He sends his warm welcomes to you all, guys. I send my warm welcome to Brandon. They just visited me recently. You should watch the video of live stream that we did with him. An amazing guy. Told me a lot about what's happening on the front line. I'm really happy that we were able to meet in person. And I hope he really enjoyed staying with me, and I am really wishing him well and that he stays safe in these times. We continue supporting Brandon. Also, right now we're talking with him how to set up his initiative with gathering and buying night vision devices, because I think it's a great way for us to do things to support the armed forces directly rather than going through big organization that would take a significant cut, because Brandon has direct connections with the manufacturers of these night vision devices, and that's great because that cuts so much red tape and so much unnecessary spending. So keep an eye on that. You can go, I'm going to link Brandon's Buy Me at Coffee to support him if you want. Support me if you want. I donate 50% of this channel profits to activities such as Brandon, so you will be supporting both Brandon and me with that. And I love you all, guys. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.